Chapter 13. Satanic Persecution. The history of the Jewish people is one marked by persecution, from ancient times to the present day. They have been the target of violence and hatred from various groups, including their Arabic neighbors, and Aryan supremacists during and after the Holocaust. Why have the Jews suffered so much anti-Semitism? The answer, according to Scripture, is that Satan hates them. The book of Genesis tells us that God chose Abraham and his descendants to be his people, and that through them all the nations of the earth would be blessed. Satan, being the enemy of God, seeks to thwart God's plans and purposes. If he can destroy the Jews, then he makes God out to be a liar, since God promised to protect Israel. Satan's hatred for the Jews is not a new phenomenon, it has been evident since the time of their enslavement in Egypt. In Exodus, we read that Pharaoh ordered the killing of all Jewish male babies, because he feared their increasing population. The midwives, however, feared God and did not carry out the order, and as a result, God blessed them. Later, when the Israelites were wandering in the wilderness, they were attacked by the Amalekites. This was not a random act of aggression. The Amalekites were descendants of Esau, Jacob's brother, and long-sworn enemies of Israel. Throughout the history of the Jewish people, we see this pattern of persecution and God's protection, again and again. When the Israelites were taken captive by the Babylonians, circa 580 BC, God promised to bring them back to their land after 70 years. And sure enough, when the 70 years were up, King Cyrus of Persia issued a decree allowing the Jews to return to their homeland, and rebuild the temple. Even during the time of the Roman occupation, when the Jewish people were scattered throughout the world, God promised to regather them and bring them back to their land. The Holocaust is perhaps the most horrific example of anti-Semitic persecution in history. Hitler and the Nazis sought to destroy the Jewish people and their culture from the face of the earth in the most horrific way possible. 6 million Jews were systematically tortured, then murdered in concentration camps, along with many others who the Nazis deemed undesirable. The fact that the Jews survived this genocide is a testimony to God's protection and faithfulness to his promises. Today, the state of Israel continues to face hostility from its Arabic neighbors. There have been numerous conflicts and wars in the region, especially over the last few decades, which manifests itself through terrorism. Hamas and Palestine Islamic Jihad, PIJ, attack from the south, whilst Hezbollah attack from the north and northeast via Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq, using rockets, missiles and drones. No one doubts these threats are becoming more persistent as time goes by. Indeed, Iran, Israel's greatest nemesis, actively supports these groups in a proxy conflict that teeters on the brink of all-out war. Nevertheless, God's promise to protect his people remains unaltered. In Zechariah, God declares that the nation of Israel is the apple of his eye. And in Isaiah, he assures them, "Fear not, for I am with you, be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Surely, I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." Christians should also make a point of standing alongside the Jewish people, as well as praying for the peace of Jerusalem, as Scripture commands us. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they be secure who love you. Peace be within your walls and security within your towers. For my brothers and companions' sake I will say, peace be within you. The Apostle Paul, in his letter to the Romans, says that Christians, he refers to us as Gentiles, are grafted into the olive tree of Israel, and as such we must not become arrogant, and start thinking we are better than the Jews. Instead, we should be grateful for the blessings that come to us through them, namely Christ, praying for the salvation of the nation, including the peace of Jerusalem. Regardless, war will come before peace. Let's not be ignorant of the sinister forces that seek to destroy the people of God. As we've already established, the devil attacks his enemies on many fronts, and one of those strikes comes from a surprising quarter, the United Nations, UN. It's truly shocking to learn that the State of Israel has been condemned by the United Nations Human Rights Council, UNHRC, a staggering 45 times, between 2006 and 2013. Reflect on this disturbing fact: the UNHRC has passed as many resolutions condemning Israel as it has for the rest of the world combined. This is a trend that should deeply concern us, especially when we consider this equates to 45.9% of all resolutions passed by the UN between those dates. It is alarming to realize that Israel, a nation comprising of only 0.2% of the world's population, is the focus of such unwarranted hostility from this international body. As we move closer to our present day, we find this trend is intensifying. According to a recent report by UN Watch, a pro-Israel monitoring group, the United Nations General Assembly passed more resolutions critical of Israel in 2022 than it did for all other nations combined once more. This lopsided focus on the Jewish state has fueled concerns among many about the UN's anti-Semitic agenda. Of the 28 resolutions passed in 2022, a staggering 15, more than half, were directed at Israel alone. It is worth noting that even countries with appalling human rights records, or involvement in regional conflicts, such as Saudi Arabia, China, Lebanon, Turkey, Venezuela, and Qatar, received no resolutions at all. Indeed, Russia, who invaded the Ukraine that year, only received 6 resolutions condemning their attack. Since 2015, the General Assembly has passed an astonishing 140 resolutions targeting Israel for alleged offenses, whilst only 68 resolutions were leveled against all other nations in total. I would suggest that Israel is being unjustly singled out by the UN. It is a sobering reality to know the UN has spent 67.3% of its time pursuing Israel. An ominous portend of things to come if ever there was one. Let me be clear, the Bible states that a global coalition will ultimately enter Israel and take control of the land. We know this because Scripture says, "I will gather all the nations to fight against Jerusalem. The city will be taken." I doubt the UN will oppose this. Indeed, they may even support such action. But let us return to the present day. In a recent development, the General Assembly passed a resolution against Israel, which was promoted by the Palestinian faction, in the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This resolution calls for the UN to assume a judicial role against Israel. It is worrying to know the vote passed with 87 nations in favor, 26 against, and 53 abstentions. This resulted in the UN demanding the International Court of Justice, ICJ, issue an advisory opinion on Israel's alleged occupation, settlement, and annexation of Palestinian land. Not surprisingly, the resolution has been met with sharp criticism from Israel and its supporters, who view it as dismissive of Israel's legitimate security concerns, and its inherent right as a sovereign nation to protect itself from hostile aggression. It is abundantly clear that the UN's bias against Israel is deep-rooted and persistent, resulting in Israel and the United States condemning their approach. Israeli UN envoy, Gilad Erdan, called the ICJ resolution a moral stain, and disapproved of it for referring to Jerusalem's Temple Mount only by its Arabic name. He also stated the UN acted in an anti-Semitic manner, by holding the vote during Shabbat, a holy day for the Jews, thereby excluding their attendance, or ability to vote. If all this were not enough, the ominous cloud of impending doom looms over Israel once more, as the newly formed hardline government of 2022 vows to resist the UN's attempts to divide the nation into 2 separate entities. This proposed 2-state solution seeks to impose an unjust and untenable reality upon God's chosen people. Yet, we must not forget that in God's sovereign plan, Israel is one whole indivisible entity as declared by the Lord Himself. Any attempt to dismantle or diminish the nation of Israel is an affront to God and will only bring about disaster and tragedy. For Scripture says, "I will gather the armies of the world into the valley of Jehoshaphat." Note, this is located between Jerusalem and the Mount of Olives. "There I will judge them for harming my people, my special possession, for scattering my people among the nations, and for dividing up my land." As we survey the current geopolitical landscape, it is impossible to ignore the alarming bias against Israel that is being displayed by the UN. Not only has the General Assembly passed a disproportionate number of resolutions against Israel, in comparison to other nations, but it has also instigated 2 open-ended, special investigations against Israel's behavior in the Middle East. Something no other nation has been forced to endure. Prime Minister of Israel Benjamin Netanyahu has rightly denounced these initiatives as despicable, and he has made it clear that Israel will not be bound by any of them. It is apparent that the UN is not acting in any way as a fair arbiter between nations. From a Christian perspective, we can say that Satan is at work within the UN, using it as a tool to advance his own nefarious agenda against Israel. How else can we explain the UN's disproportionate focus on this tiny nation, which represents a mere 0.2% of the world's population? It's clear that something much darker is at play here. We must recognize that as we approach end times, Satan is tightening his grip on the world, using every means at his disposal to wage war against God's people. But Christians must take comfort in the fact that God remains sovereign, and his will shall be done.